At age 14, Nick Prefontaine's parents were told he might never walk, talk, or eat on his own again. After a life-threatening snowboarding accident, he fought back against absolute impossible odds and he won by running, not walking, out of the hospital less than 90 days after his accident. Absolutely amazing. Nick's brain injury and near-death experience motivated him to become a professional speaker and accomplished businessman, and you do not want to miss Nick's story.
Have you ever felt like giving up, quitting, throwing in the towel? Welcome to Never Ever Give Up Hope featuring Carol Graham. She's an author, health coach, and motivational speaker. Backed into a corner multiple times in her life, Carol shares with you stories on how she overcame some of the toughest obstacles a person can go through in life, but refused to give up hope. Rather than admit defeat, an opportunity was presented, and it involves each and every one of you. Carol will feature spectacular guests who will share their messages of hope, encouragement, and their inspiration to prove why life's adversities only make you stronger. And now, welcoming the host of the show, here's Carol Graham.
Hi, Nick. I'm so glad to have you finally on Never Ever Give Up Hope and so anxious to share your story. So thank you so much for being here today.
I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
So tell us your story. Tell us about what happened when you were 14 years old.
Sure. So, Carol, it all goes back to that fateful day when I was only in eighth grade, with my friends at ski club, and ski club was always an exciting day of the week for us. Ski Club Wednesdays is what we always like to call it, because we got released a little bit early from school. And I'm sure that you and your listeners can remember any bit of time that you got to miss when you were that age, when you were 14 years old of school was a bonus, was fantastic. So my buddies and we had actually brought our snowboard gear onto the bus to get ready so as not to miss a precious moment. And we got to the mountain where the rest of the class migrated inside to get ready, not us. We were ready to go. So we headed right for the chairlift. And Carol, when we were going up the chairlift, we noticed that it was very icy because it had been raining earlier in the day, but that didn't slow us down. We were pretty experienced snowboarders, so we knew what we were
Hmm.
doing. And where the chairlift went over was actually right over the terrain park where all of the jumps were. And Carol, I knew as soon as I saw it that I had to go off the biggest jump in the terrain park. There, there wasn't even a moment in my mind of thinking, oh, maybe, because it was raining earlier, I should be careful. Or, maybe I'm not going to hit. There was none of that. I was definitely hitting that jump. And I mean, right down to the fact that I was already thinking about what we would do after I landed that huge trick. Maybe grab a burger and fries in the lodge, or we could even head over to the other chairlift for some runs on those trails. I was just happy to be there finally.
Mm.
So got to the top, buckled into my snowboard, took a breath of that crisp winter air, and confidently charged towards that jump with all my speed. And going up to the jump, I caught the edge of my snowboard, and that's the last thing that I remember.
At what speed do you think you were traveling?
That is a great question. I think I was really pumping.
Okay.
I wasn't even slowing down to check myself to slow down. I was going straight down from the top. Um, like only a 14-year-old boy could do. I was getting after it, I guess you could say. So they actually wanted to bring a helicopter to the mountain, Carol, to rush me to the hospital.
Hmm.
they couldn't because it was too windy, so they had to send in an ambulance. And out of all the paramedics, there was only one who could intubate on the spot, and
Oh my word.
I needed that to be able to breathe. And lucky for me, he had actually been before he got the call for my accident. He was coincidentally in the parking lot. So just
Gee.
there were several things about that day that had to break the right way for me to be here today and to tell this story. So that was the first one. The second one, although I wasn't wearing a helmet, the goggles that I had on, the doctors, eyewitness accounts, everything, my friends of mine told me that not only did they brace my initial impact, but as I continued to hit my head and continued to roll down the mountain, the goggles moved to cushion each blow between my head and the ice. And
Oh
I,
my
wa-
goodness.
I wore some pretty big goggles, Carol, with a lot of padding. I never fathomed, though, that I would need them to brace my fall.
Hmm.
So the school had to get in touch with my parents and have them meet me at the hospital. So all they knew was that I'd been in an accident. And my dad was the one that they were able to reach first. And when he called my mom, he also wasn't able to get alive. So he had to leave her a message. And as soon as he hung up, he realized that the message would panic her. So he called back and deleted it. So when they both got to the hospital, they were totally shocked to see how rough of a shape I was in.
Hmm.
My head and shoulder where I made the initial impact were bruised beyond comprehension. And the doctors had to actually drill a hole for a shunt to be inserted into my brain to relieve the pressure. And without that happening, the pressure could have gone up and I would have died.
Hmm.
So at this point, I was out for the count, but I can only imagine what it must have looked like to see a doctor standing over me, but on my chest while he was drilling the hole into my head. So I ended up being in the coma I was in a coma, and I ended up being in that coma for 3 weeks.
Hmm.
It was a partially induced coma, so I really don't remember a month. So that period of when I got my accident, February 5th to March 5th, that's gone to me. I have no memory of that time. And after a month, I was transported to a rehab hospital in Boston. And that's where I began my journey um, of having to learn how to walk, talk, and eat again. And as you mentioned in the intro, um, the doctors came into my room to share with my parents what was going on. And my parents stopped them when they started to share right in front of me, and they didn't want the doctors to share right in front of me because they knew even though I was in a coma, I was still taking in information. So
Right.
they
Right.
made the doctors step outside the room, and then once they were outside the room, um, they shared that I probably wouldn't ever walk, talk, or eat on my own ever again. And even if I was able to come out of my coma, there was a good chance that I would need 24-hour care for the rest of my life. So, to my parents' credit, they didn't accept this like so many patients do as a death sentence. So they took the information, thanked the doctors, and allowed me to treat it like any other situation. So this was no different than any other challenge that I had faced up to this point in my life.
So how long was the time period between from the accident to when you were transferred to the other facility?
It was a month.
Oh,
Um,
okay. Okay.
yeah, it was a month because they had to wait. They had to wait until, even though I came out of the coma, Carol, it's funny. They said I was in the coma for 3 weeks, and I even see videos of myself in the ICU with my eyes open, looking around. I have no conscious memory of being at the ICU. However, it's interesting because the next year, um, I'd been invited back to the hospital to take part in a groundbreaking ceremony for a new building that was going up right beside where I was. And because I was right there, I went up to the ICU where I was, and it was my first time back since I had been there in a coma. And I was walking around the ICU and like just couldn't I just couldn't place it. I was like, everything looked so familiar. Like right down to the nurses and the doctors' faces. Like I'm like, I feel like I know you, but like I can't put my finger on even the layout of the room and the floors. Like I knew I'm like, oh, I've been here before,
Mm,
but I
mhm,
couldn't really put my finger on it. So after I was transported to the rehab hospital in Boston, that's where I began my long journey of having to learn how to walk, talk, and eat again. And they were long days. I would start my day, I'll just give you an idea after being transported there. I would start my day by having my occupational therapist. She would actually have to teach me how to shower again. And if you and your listeners can picture that, I mean, I forgot everything, so I had to get
mm,
everything back. So they had to teach me how to shower again, right down to the fact that the water comes before the soap. Like even that simple. And so then I would have breakfast after I showered, have my occupational therapist show me how to do that, have breakfast, then I would start my first therapy sessions of the day. And I had double sessions of physical, occupational, and speech therapy. And the first set came in the morning. So I would have physical, occupational, and speech therapy individual sessions. And then after which we would break for lunch, and it was back in my room. And my mom, who was part of my support, she was with me all the time. Like I always had someone with me, either my mom during the day, my mom or her parents, my grandparents would be there with me during the day, and then my dad would come in and spend nights with me. And I just remember at that point, from what I'm the day, like the day in the life kind of thing, of what I'm telling you, I was in a wheelchair still at this point, and it was at lunch after um, the first sessions of physical, occupational, and speech therapy. I remember, I think I had a moment of weakness, I guess you could call it. Um, I'm not sure. A lot of people wouldn't call it weakness, but it was just I had a little confusion, a little blip. I remember looking over my situation and being in a wheelchair, and I can remember turning to my mom and I said, "Mom, am I ever going to be able to walk again?" And she didn't even hesitate. She said, "Of course you are. That's what we're doing here, so you can get everything back and we can go home." Step. This allowed me to continue to take my next step. And I think looking back at my whole experience being in the hospital, the ICU first, and then the rehab hospital, having to learn how to walk, talk, and eat again. I think that's one of, if not the only time that I had that moment of doubt. But then once I had that affirmation of the fact that no, like we're going forward and gonna get everything back so we can go home. I was back set on the right path, if you will. So my parents actually had, I figured this is an important detail to share. My parents actually had affirmations all over my room. And this is even before I could walk. So I didn't have a choice. I had to read these every day. And it was before I could walk. So it wasn't like I could get up and run out of the room. It was with each step I take, I'm getting stronger and stronger. And then like in every way, I'm getting closer and closer to my goal. Just some amalgamation, some combination of that like positive, uplifting um, affirmation all over my room, everywhere I looked. So that was one of the big things. I'm actually in the process of writing about it for next month's newsletter, the July newsletter. So I figured that was an important detail to share. And if you fast forward less than 60 days later, Carol, I ran out of the hospital and I realized my goal of running out of the hospital. And um, I, I really can remember that day like it was yesterday. Um, the what we did was we walked to a local like a town pizza next to the hospital, and I realized my goal of a Coke and a grinder. So I had a goal for like each section of my recovery. You probably wouldn't even know what that was because you're in a different area of the country than me. But that's like for those of you listeners that have no idea what I'm talking about, like a sandwich, like a
Hmm.
turkey grinder, like it was Coke and a grinder was my thing that I wanted, and that was my food goal. Because it wasn't like I could have a bunch of soda when I was in the hospital. So
Right, right,
I realized it that last day, and we walked next door, had my Coke in the grinder, and then I ran out. That's where I ran, and I raced my physical therapist. She raced me backwards, but I remember that. And it, like I said, it wasn't like my work was done. I had to continue to go to outpatient therapy for another 6 months, along with being tutored all summer long 5 days a week in order to continue on to high school with the rest of my classmates. And looking back at it, it's a little surreal because I'm sure you and your listeners can understand this point that when you're younger, time is compressed.
right, right,
So if you look like 6 months, 12 months, 18 months out, it seems like a lifetime. Um, However, the older I get, I'm really coming to learn that it's not that much time. And that's why it took a mentor reflecting it back to me a little over, gosh, now, a little about 5 years ago, reflecting back to me. She said, wait a minute. So after finishing your rehab from being in a coma and having to learn how to walk, talk, and eat again, you got your start door knocking pre-foreclosure doors. So I started working, and that was door knocking, notice of default doors, or in other words, pre-foreclosure is another word for it. Homeowners that had missed several payments on their loan, and the bank still hadn't foreclosed on the home. So I would get a list of these, go and knock on their door, and try to set up meetings for one of our investors to meet with them the following week to see if they'd be a fit for us to help them out of their unfortunate situation. And uh, looking back at this, I can see that because it was so soon since my snowboarding accident, my recovery, it was a part of my recovery. Uh, Going door to door, helping people out of their unfortunate situation. So
wow.
I think with that I can take a breath and see if see if you have any questions to help this along.
Yes, I do. My first question is, after receiving the original prognosis that you may never walk again, was it your parents' attitude that changed first, or were you given that prognosis and did not accept it, or what was going on emotionally at that initial time period?
Sure. So I had no idea. My parents kept that they kept that detail from me, and
Okay.
they how I viewed it and how they allowed me to see it, Carol, was okay, this, we're not going to sugarcoat it. This stinks. Like, this is an unfortunate situation that happened. No one wanted to get in the accident. It's an accident. It's called an accident for a reason. Now we just have to do this therapy and then we can get back home and get back to normal life. So that was always the goal for me. So I always just treated it like, oh, okay, so this bad thing happened. We have to do some work, do some therapy in order to get back, and then we can get back to normal life. So that's how it was always framed for me. Um,
Okay. Okay.
like the full remediation, I guess you could call it. And I learned that word from the being the closing keynote speaker for the Brain Injury Alliance of Vermont at their annual conference. I was like, oh, I was sitting there at the end, like being the closing keynote speaker, learning kind of after the fact of why I was successful, why I was able to make a full recovery and everything. And it was really it was really cool. It was enjoyable for me, but then I was really able to tie it all together. So to answer your question though, it was never framed to me like, okay, you have an option here. You're either you can not do the work and stay where you are, or you can do the
Mm-hmm.
work and kind of get everything back. It was always just, okay, this happened and now we got to do some work to get back to normal life.
Did you have to deal with fear at all? And if so, how?
Think I touched on that earlier. There was never any, let me say it this way. There was never any fear, I would say.
Okay.
There was never any like uh-oh or I'm scared for
Okay.
this, just because I was always the only thing I was focused on, Carol, was my next step. And
Mm,
the reason I like to share that story of when I was in a wheelchair in the rehab hospital and I had that moment of doubt, the reason I share that is we all have doubt. We all
right.
we all have doubts. So it's like I'm not immune to that, and I'm not like I'm not like AI, or I'm not
Okay.
a
Right,
robot.
right, right.
That's appropriate nowadays to use that. I couldn't
Yes,
use that.
yes.
Couldn't use that 10 or 15 years ago. Um, yeah, but I'm not immune to that. So I was surrounded by support, and that's one of the things I like to preach and not preach, my God, not preach, but help people with is you got to constantly have people around you. Because if you don't, your mind is going to have the opportunity to wander, and that's where the fear and the doubt can come in. But if you always have that support, if you always have someone around you, taking turns, then you're going to keep your mind focused on what your next steps are going to be. And that's I was blessed to have always have someone in my corner.
Oh my goodness, that's awesome. I thank you so much for sharing that part of your story. We're going to take a 30-second break. And when we come back, I want you to tell the audience and me, I can't wait to hear about your STEP step system. And we'll be right back.
Carol Graham would like to show you the path from misery to miraculous triumph in her fast-paced memoir, Battered Hope. She relates her determination to succeed as someone who experienced one horrendous nightmare after another. Gang raped and left for dead, loss of a child, husband falsely imprisoned, and cancer. Nothing could break her tenacity or faith. No matter what you face, heartache, loss, suffering, or injustice, Carol will illustrate how she became a victor the same way you can. The secret is to never, ever give up hope. Order your copy at Amazon or batteredhope.blogspot.com.
Thank you so much, Nick, for sharing that story. And now I would like you to talk about the STEP step system. I'm excited to hear what you're going to share with us about that.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So that was actually the system that I used unknowingly, and it wasn't discovered until years later. So I unknowingly used it to not only make a full recovery, but run out of the hospital. And that's the STEP system. So STEP, Carol, is an acronym. It stands for support. What I can do, I'll give everyone like a 10,000-foot view. And if they're interested in learning more, I can let them know how they can download the whole STEP system for free at the end. So it stands for support. The first letter, S, is support. So make sure you have the support of your family and friends. This is going to have you falling back on relationships that you built prior to your setback. T is trust. Trust that once you take your first step, your next step's always going to be available to you. This also starts with trusting that voice that we all have inside of ourselves and making sure you follow it. And the way I always like to illustrate this is that after right on along that moment of doubt that I previously shared with you, and the listeners, that voice. So it was right around that time of that moment of doubt. I can remember this was before I could even talk. So I could remember overhearing my parents talking with my team of doctors and therapists, and they would meet with them every week. and they go around the room and say, okay, so what do we need to do to make sure Nick makes a full recovery? I heard in the back of my head, you're going to run out of the hospital. So then running out of the hospital, I was able to communicate that to the rest of the team. And then running out of the hospital became the common goal that we were all working towards. So E is energy. So maintaining your energy allows your body's natural ability to be able to heal itself. And medication has the potential to get in the way of that.
Mm,
So obviously within reason here. I mean that first night in the hospital after my accident cost $250,000. And that was back in 2003. So if it wasn't for modern medicine, I wouldn't be here today.
right, right.
Um, However, there's a use, a time, and a place for everything. So, a month after my accident, when I was transported to the rehab hospital in Boston, I we needed to start to get me off of the medication. And unless it was absolutely critical to my survival, we opted not to have me on any medicine. And energy, because we're on E, energy continues to evolve. So if you fast forward to present day, what energy means to me and taking care of my energy is I have a meditation and a qigong routine that I do for anywhere from 30 to 45 minutes. Probably ends up being in total like 3 to 4 times a week. And I think that's really what energy means to me today. And I do that along with getting a couple of natural treatments to help keep my body in tune and to be able to impact and affect the most amount of people possible. One of which is it's called a myofascial release. It's like um, akin or like a very similar to a like a craniosacral therapy,
Yes,
if you haven't heard of that.
yes, I
So,
have. Yes.
okay, the and then the other one is called Tuina. Now I get Tuina from the same individual, Dr. Ming Wu, who taught me how to meditate and gave me the um, meditation and qigong exercises and everything. So he's one that taught me how to meditate back in 2009. Then finally is P for persistence. So persistence, once you've taken your first step, keep getting up every day and taking your next step, no matter how small. And by continuing to move forward every day, Carol, you are building an unstoppable momentum. So that's really like a 10,000 foot view of the STEP system.
Very well stated. Thank you for breaking it down for us.
Oh,
And
you're welcome. I forgot to
oh,
I forgot I was going to share this. So that's 10,000 foot view of the STEP system. But to download the whole STEP system for free, you can go to nickprefontaine.com/step, and you can learn all about support, trust, energy, and persistence. And especially if you're anything, if you're overwhelmed, if you feel stuck and you just don't know what to do next, this can be a great first step, Carol, because what we find is once you take your first step, your next step is always going to be possible.
that's quite a statement. Say that again. I really like that. Once you take your first step,
Yep. Once you take your first step, your next step is always going to be possible.
wow. Well, this has been, again, as I said, encouraging and inspiring, and I know that my listeners are going to appreciate the clarity, the way you made it intriguing, but also that they can relate whatever they're going through as well, and that's what people are looking for. That's another form of support, is it not?
Absolutely.
So what I would like to do is we need to close because it is We're getting into over 45 minutes, and we could probably talk a lot longer. But if there's anything you would like to say in summary before we do close, that would be wonderful.
I think we covered a lot.
Hmm.
We did cover a lot. I would say if I can just encourage those people that are out there. So if it's whether it's a any kind of challenge, but
Okay.
specifically I'm talking about like physical well-being, health challenge. If you're kind of putting your head up against a wall and you're not getting answers everywhere you look, and it's just like things are looking bleak, and you don't know what to do. If I could just encourage you, uh,
Mm,
we all have an inkling inside of us, and now some people call it this this voice that I talked about earlier. So some people call it the universe, our higher consciousness. I call it God. I think we all have that voice inside of us, and especially if you're stuck or challenged and don't know what to do next. Um, if I can encourage you to just get quiet um, and listen to that guidance. Now, a lot of us will kind of shun it away and say, oh, no, no, I could never do that. That's crazy. Like for me, when I heard that voice when I was in the hospital, that I'm going to run out of the hospital, I mean, I could have easily said, no, you're insane. You're crazy because I was in a wheelchair at that time. I was having issues just learning how to walk, talk, and eat again. And who was I to say I'm going to run out of the hospital? But I listened to that voice. And if I can just encourage everyone out there to listen to that voice, whatever it is for you, because I find that by listening to that, and this is what I believe, Carol, by listening to that. So, quick sidebar ever since I have graduated from high school, I've always had this voice in the back of my head, no matter what I'm doing for work, always saying to me, yeah, great, Nick. But what you really need to be doing is telling your story from stage and helping trauma survivors thrive with the rest of their lives. So
mm,
I
that's
always
awesome.
thought I always thought by sharing my story once in a while at some of our work events was doing it. Um, Kind of, but not really. So, since I've been on this path and I was introduced to my mentor in May of 2021, since I've had that first conversation with her, Carol, there has been no voice in the back of my head. So, what that's evidenced to me of is that I'm doing exactly what I was put on this earth to do. Um, so if I can just, it would bring so much joy, peace, and healing to the world if more people would just tune in and listen to that guidance, listen to that voice, and follow it, and not doubt that voice and themselves. Because once you're following it, it's really heaven. It's bliss right now doing this and following that voice for me.
Oh my goodness. Thank you. So that was awesome synopsis. I really, really appreciate that. And I know my listeners do as well. So thank you again, Nick, for being on Never Ever, Never Ever Give Up Hope.
Thank you for listening to Never Ever Give Up Hope, featuring Carol Graham. Did you know that most people succeed because they are determined to? Quitting was never an option. Carol loves your comments and will respond to each one. So please subscribe and review this podcast. A rating of 5 stars would be outstanding and appreciated. Remember, if you are still here, there is always hope.